In today's tutorial, we will be setting up expenses. After you have opened the tab, you will see that once again, the page is divided up into two sections. The upper section contains types of expense categories, which there are 4 of at the moment. In the lower section are expense transactions. Each of these will be one of the types listed in the upper section. For example, we have rent payments in the top section. In the lower section are expense transactions. Each of these will be one of the types listed in the upper section. For example, we have rent payments in the upper section, but in the lower section we have a more specific transaction, rent for the facilities in January. You might have noticed that there is no Add Expense Transaction button. Transactions will show up automatically after paying for purchase orders and bills. So instead, let's create a new type of expense category. Click on Add Expense Category to open a form. Once again, the first few parameters should be familiar as they have showed up in both the Income and Funds tabs. The title, Transport Expenses. We have no groups, so let's leave that as not selected. We will not be creating any folders during this tutorial, as we have covered that in the Income tab, and it works exactly the same way here. The differences begin with the field Type of Expense Category. The program offers 3 choices: raw materials and supplies, production, and additional expenses. These choices are used when preparing a consolidated report, but we will talk more about that in a future tutorial. For now, let's just pick production. As for sources of payment, by default, the source will be set to income, but you can select any working fund. In any case, the program will automatically pick this source of payment for all purchase orders that use this type of expense category. If we have a dedicated fund for paying suppliers, we can create an expense category called Purchasing Products and select it every time we pay a supplier. The payment will be taken from the fund dedicated to it. That way, you can save a bit of time every time you have to file a purchase order. Of course, the final decision is made by the directive, and if for some reason they decide that this purchase order should be paid from some other source, this can be changed in the directive. The type of expense category itself can also be edited at a later point to use a different source of payment by default. The box Operating Expenses is marked when dealing with absolutely vital expenses, without which the company simply cannot function. Purchase orders that use an operating expense category will be shown separately in the directive instead of being split up into one of the blocks, so that decisions regarding them can be made as soon as possible instead of having to search for them among all the incoming purchase orders. This is especially handy in larger companies, where there are a lot of purchase orders coming in every day. Before saving, we need to also assign a number. Let's assign E5 and click on Save. Our newly created type of expense category has showed up on the list. As with previous tabs of financial planning, the search function in the expense category Transactions allows you to look through the listed items by title, and the advanced search allows to enter the type of transaction, the payment source, date, post, and amount. Clicking on this icon at the top will once again show a pie chart showing the expenses divided up into expense category types. These tabs are used to switch viewing modes, and here you can see the balance on the beginning and end of a period, as well as how many transactions have been approved and paid out during the selected period. One last tip about pie charts, about grouping to be more specific. It is available after clicking the arrow icon. Click on the Grouping menu. Here you can select a percentage, and if some category makes up a smaller percentage than the one selected, it will simply be displayed with other small percentages and shown as Other in the diagram. Our current percentage for grouping is set to 20%, but our smallest category is 100% since we only have one expense transaction on this example account. There are no changes right now, but this is a useful feature for working with the program. That concludes today's tutorial. As always, we will be happy to answer your questions in the comments below.